So, welcome to another episode of Trouble to Transformation. Today, I have a very special guest, Jen McCutcheon, the founder of Enable No More, a movement to help moms of addicted children recover their power and peace from the traps of addiction, enabling, and codependency. Jen provides spiritual and science-based recovery programs to support mothers, families that are impacted by loved ones' addiction to break the cycles of suffering, learning a new way to love, to think, and to live that encourages long-term recovery for themselves and their child. Welcome, Jen. I am so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Rhonda, for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Yes. So please tell me about your mission behind Enable No More.
My mission is really to bring awareness, education, and resources to moms who are loving a child experiencing addiction, women who are loving a loved one with addiction, and to offer them a big floodlight into the darkness that they are experiencing. And, we have to break the stigma around mental health and addiction and the impact that it has on family members and provide resources that are actually going to have impact on the entire family coming back to themselves, recovering their peace, their happiness, their health. And it's time. And because of my own experience with loving my child who has been experiencing addiction and loved ones for over 20 years, I know firsthand the pain, the suffering, the turmoil, the chaos, the despair that so many people are sitting in, and they're isolated and alone. And I can't know what I know and not share it. That is my mission, to share, to flood light into the darkness, to shine hope and power back into people's lives who are feeling powerless and helpless. We do not have to sit in that space when we learn a new way to love, think, and live.
I absolutely love that. That was very well said, Jen, and so beautiful. And for myself, like, I am not a mother. However, I was the addicted child. And I know firsthand the pain and suffering that I put my family, particularly my mother, through. And, and when it comes to, you said some very important words there too, like the hope and the happiness. And, because when we talk about grief, when we think about grief, we always think about like the death of a loved one. However, there's also loss. There's secondary losses, the loss of, your best friend, the companionship, the loss of that, the time spent, the quality of life, so change equals loss also equals grief.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And this is a really big component of parents and mothers, and particularly that experience this deep grief, this loss of a child that is still here, but their child is no longer the child that they have and remember in their heart. And the soul of that child is still there. The beautiful person, that person is there, but temporarily it is masked by this thing called addiction. And we don't know what to do with that as moms, because all we want is our babies back. And I don't care how old your child is. They could be 40, it is always your child. And there's so much despair and heartbreak. Yeah. And when we begin to break down what addiction is, what is really underneath the root cause, that is the trauma, this unhealed pain. There is this deep-rooted pain in your loved one that they're trying to find relief. And in that, you're losing them. And this is where the traps of addiction, the cycles of addiction, bring the entire family in and enmesh them in enabling and codependency. So the grief turns into enabling and codependency, because you're trying to get back that child that you're reaching for, and you're holding on to, and you're grasping for. And in that, there's just chaos and despair. And when we are able to break down all of that into really compassionate love, unconditional love, and understanding the chemicals in the brain, all the things that are happening behind the scenes that we don't actually know are happening in the moment because we're just caught up in this emotion dysregulation, the confusion that sets in, and our own trauma that's being triggered. And it's like the perfect storm for absolute chaos.
Yeah, exactly. Like Gabor Mate says, it's not about what the addiction is, it's why the addiction. But, but even from a mother's point of view, or any family member that's losing a loved one to addictions, there has to be a lot of mixed feelings as well, like anger and shame and guilt. And you're potentially experiencing symptoms of PTSD as well. Like, did you ever experience panic attacks, the numbness, flashbacks, nightmares, and any physical stress responses?
Oh my goodness. Yes, yes,
Where to
yes. Do it
begin?
all.
Hey, which one? Name one. Yeah.
Yes. And, I think it's really important to mention here because, my experience is 20 years. My first husband had a concurrent disorder and struggled with severe addiction. And my children were very young when our family really was torn apart through addiction. And I didn't understand mental health back then. I didn't understand the stuff that I know now. And when I began the journey with my son at age 15 with addiction, it re-traumatized. It brought back all the experiences from my first relationship with and interaction with addiction and mental health, and all the trauma that was in there, because I never dealt with it. I thought I did my best, but it just re-triggered. So, and I think it's important because I think, breaking down that this isn't just your loved one, your child that is experiencing this addiction. There are nuggets of mental health and addiction that has stemmed back probably generations within your family.
Yes.
If we really want to get real and raw and talk about addiction and break down the barriers that are keeping people stuck in suffering, we have to be willing to open the book and take a good look.
Yes, agreed. And you said a couple key words there too, like stigma. Like when somebody's grieving the loss of a loved one due to addictions or even suicide, there's such a stigma attached to it that a lot of the people who are suffering from those losses, and I mean, it does, like I said, it doesn't necessarily have to be a death, but just the loss of that companionship and having them in their life. There's a sense of, like I said, a stigma. So they don't properly process that grief because they don't feel like they have the support. So generally, a lot of people don't openly discuss their grief because they are hiding behind that veil of shame. So this is why my heart is so full that you have a program like this, because it's well needed. And another question I wanted to ask too, that I know sometimes there's a lot of resistance within the family dynamic because you'll have one family member that cuts that person off. They're just like, nope, zero contact. And then another family who maybe supports them through money. So then there's a conflict of what to actually do with this individual. Did you come across that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, and that's where the enabling, there's so much happening in that dynamic, Rhonda, like so much from the manipulation of active addiction, the person that is, really tag teaming people to see who's going to cave in a sense, and also who's going to show up and continue to love. And that's where boundary setting becomes so overwhelming because you're being triggered and there's so many things going on at once. Am I loving my loved one or am I enabling them? Am I standing up to support this person or am I breaking the boundary of another loved one? How do I navigate this? Because boundaries are so critical and it's a tricky thing to navigate. In my experience, with my second husband, I've now former second husband, I've been married twice and divorced twice. And both of my partners have substance abuse disorder, including my son. So, I mean, I was in it and there was a lot going on with, my husband at the time saying, I can't do this anymore. And me saying, it is not, there is no bone in my body that can't do this anymore. I have to stay. I have to do whatever I can do.
Mhm.
And there was this fine line of having to respect his boundaries, of him knowing his hard line, and me being able to still stand in my power as a mother to show up for my child in the capacity that I could, which was very limited because I became so sick mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you name it. So it's a dance, and it's very difficult. It breaks families apart. It breaks siblings apart. It breaks grandparents. And I mean, this affects the entire family. And that's why I started my Radiant Recovery programs within Enable No More, because we need to sit with this. There is no quick answer. There is no one answer, but it's in consciously exploring ourselves, the thoughts, the beliefs, the barriers that we're experiencing, instead of just sweeping them under the rug and pulling down the mask and just trying to pretend like we're getting through when we're barely surviving.
Yeah.
There is another way. There is another way to do it. And it is spectacular if you allow yourself to explore.
Yeah.
With compassion, releasing shame, because shame is just a crippling, debilitating emotion.
Crippling.
That, like, it's just, we need to remove shame for any change.
Yeah,
Brene Brown says that the best. We need to remove shame to, facilitate change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a word for that too. It's disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief is grief that you feel you can't express because of the shame. Oh my God, if I go out into the world and tell people about my addicted child, they're going to judge me. I did something wrong. And I just kind of want to go back to, like, when you mentioned how hard it was to kind of cut your son off, so that you were not enabling him and respecting your husband's boundaries and stuff. And I can even just speak from my own experience. When I was in the thick of my addiction, I did have a friend that lent me a significant amount of money, and there was always some sort of story. There was always drama, whether it was my car was in the impound or I had tickets to pay or whatever. And I'll tell you firsthand, it made it worse. Because not only did I use the money to get more drugs, now I had another debt to pay. So it actually made things, it exacerbated the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And so, I mean, there's so many ways that I enabled my child. And the way that I look at it, people are like, well, I don't even know what enabling was. And I didn't know what enabling was. I didn't think I was enabling for a long time. I thought I was doing what I was supposed to do as a mom, which I call the mama bear mindset. Nobody gets between me and my cub.
Yeah,
Nobody.
I can imagine.
And addiction ain't gonna come, like, it was. And it's the fight, it's the resistance to what is actually happening that creates the suffering. So enabling, whether it be giving money, whether it be, I'm picking up and driving my son to locations, which I thought it was, he had an appointment or he needed a ride from point A to point B. I mean, he was living on the streets at times where it was an opportunity for me just to connect with him, just to be and see him. And I did it because I thought it's a connection. And again, all I was doing was dropping him off at, to pick up drugs, or making a connection that wasn't a good connection for him. And it only exacerbates the pain, and it only feeds addiction. But how do you, as a mom, how do you, as a mom, step back and allow the natural unfolding process to happen without carrying shame or living in absolute fear, terrorized day in and day out that the worst case scenario is going to happen? And with addiction, the reality is that is a daily possibility. Yeah. And that's a lot for anybody to carry, the person that's struggling with addiction and the family members and the moms that are feeling like, if I say no, that's it. They're going to spiral and I'm never going to see them again. Yes. And that's what we're living. So it is really about learning how to deal with the emotions that you're feeling and not have them consume you. We are consumed by our emotions and we think that we are our emotions.
Mhm.
And what I just said is the thoughts. What if this, what if that, if I do this, what if that happens? And how am I going to live with myself? Well, wait a minute. It's about coming to learn tools to regulate your emotions, to come
Yes.
back to the present moment, not living in the past or the future. Neither
Mhm.
exist. All you have right here and right now, but we can't do that because we become disconnected from our bodies. We're
Mm.
disassociated, and we're living in chronic stress. We're living in PTSD. We're living in shock because the
Yes.
crisis after crisis, things after things, and how it's like the confusion. It's like I talk about the distorted vision. Our children have a distorted vision because there's the substance that they're using. I have a distorted vision as well. My central nervous system is out of whack, and there's a system malfunction.
Mhm. Yes.
And it's bringing all of the power back to ourselves,
Mhm.
bringing back the peace, bringing back the calm, but we don't know how to do it. That's
Well,
what we have to learn.
yes.
That's what I'm teaching people is how to do it.
How to do
We're
it.
not taught this stuff.
No, we're not. And going back to the nervous system too, when we're in that hyper arousal state, which is, the sympathetic nervous system in that state, we can only stay there for so long. And then we start to shut down, and we like you said, you'll start to disassociate. You go into the dorsal, which is the hypoarousal, and now just an everyday chore like cleaning the house seems like your body's just going to blow up into 1,000 little pieces because it's so excruciating. One thing though I did hear you mention earlier was that I didn't have the tools that I do now. Did you want to talk about those so that, when people are looking for the support that they need, they kind of have an idea what's coming for them? Because you
Yes,
got to put in
yes.
the work too, right? This stuff needs work.
100%. And there's so many people that go like, how did you do it? How did you do it? And it's like, there's not just one thing that has gotten me to where I am today. And where I am today, I'm still a work in progress. And I think that's really important. I haven't just arrived at this full, healing and my life. It's about being able to ride the waves. My son still is working his own recovery. And with that comes the ups and the downs. And I'm working my own recovery. And with that comes the ups and downs. And the tools that I use and that I teach my clients are all around mindfulness, being present in the here and the now, learning how to identify when you're in a moment, when you're having a moment of crisis, when you're having a moment of disconnect from ourselves, and how to bring yourself back. So things like breath work is a powerful tool.
It's a game changer.
It saved my life. It's literally saved my life. It is free. It's with you wherever you are, and you can do it anywhere. It's not going to cost you a dime. You can breathe while you're driving. You can breathe. And I mean, just being conscious of your breath. You don't have to do some crazy.
Yeah.
It can be just, wait a minute. I'm driving in my car. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling whatever. And I'm just going to come and center myself on my breath as I drive from point A to point B and listen to my breath. Feel my chest rise and fall. That's presence. That's connection.
Yes.
That's centering. That's activating hormones in your brain to release calming chemicals to bring some balance back to the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
So simple. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Meditation. We're so disconnected from ourselves. So with meditation, even, again, one cycle of breath is a form of meditation.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be on your yoga mat for 2 hours a day.
I was just going to say that. Yeah. A lot of people get discouraged because meditation is actually kind of a hard practice. But but like you said, we're talking about your yoga mat and being there for over an hour, 2 hours. And I can't even do that.
Yeah.
Right. But even just like simple tools like body scans, just recognizing physical sensations in the body, identifying where it is, what it feels like, what does it need right now? And like you said, it's all mindfulness, being present. Is there any more tools that's come to mind?
Well, an acronym that I use with my clients is I can. So whenever you're having a moment, and I say this because it can be anything. It can be a full-on crisis. It can be an argument with your husband. It can be, an emotion with yourself. Maybe you're catching yourself, beating yourself up for something, and you're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's just the awareness of it. If you can become aware, you can change your next step.
Yes.
You have to become aware. So the I can acronym is basically a 4-step process to take yourself through to bring yourself back to a place of calm and harmony so that you can actually process whatever it is that you're dealing with. So I is identify, the first step. You got to identify that there's something going on with you. There's an emotion that's taken over, and behind the emotion is a thought. So the next step is you want to connect. You want to connect with yourself. Connect with what is the thought that I'm thinking that's creating this automatic emotional reaction within me. What is the emotion that I'm feeling? Identify it. Sit with it. Sit with it. Explore it. Don't push it away. Don't suppress it. Don't pretend it's not there. Connect with it. And then connect somatically. So where am I feeling this in my body? Is it my stomach? Is it my throat constricting? Am I breaking out in sweats? Is my heart racing? Connect the dots. The next one is allow. Allow yourself, give yourself permission to sit with it. Feel it. We can't feel if we don't heal. Feel it, explore it with like a childlike curiosity. I like to say it's like watching a football game. Sit on the sidelines, be like, ooh, darn, I feel that. That really hurts my heart. Man, the sweats, the contraction in my body. Oh, like I feel it, but don't attach to it. Just allow it. Be present with it.
Yes.
And then N is neutralize. Neutralize with breath. Breathe. Connect to your environment. Maybe look at the wall, look at the colors, count the squares on the floor as you breathe. Bring yourself back to present moment, here and now. And then from there, you're able to just bring clarity because you're present. In the present moment, new possibilities, new potentials present themselves because we're not living in the past or the future. And we're balanced ourselves. We've balanced and brought some homeostasis back to ourselves.
Yeah, I love that acronym. I use one that's kind of similar. It's called RAIN, and it's pretty much the same thing. It's just recognize, awareness, investigate, and nurture.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't realize that emotions have certain physical sensations in the body. And because we're always in this busy, right? Like, oh, I feel uncomfortable right now, so I'm just going to go over here and distract myself and scroll or do whatever. So we ignore those physical sensations. Where anger is generally like, a clenched jaw or maybe clenched fists or whatnot. Shame sometimes is rounded shoulders. We make ourselves small. Grief and sadness is heavy on the heart. So as soon as we become aware of those physical sensations, exactly what you said, what can we do for this right now? Sometimes it's just tapping or a little bit of a massage. There's a little bit of a massage, and just ask your higher self. And it's so amazing because when I ask a client, just take a couple breaths and just ask yourself, what does that need right now? And don't think.
Exactly.
Something that comes up automatically, intuitively. And every time the tears come, and they're like, I think I just need love. And I'm like, okay.
Yes.
Now, how do we do that? How do we get you love? And it's always to me, from me with love.
Yes.
We have to stop looking for external validations, right? It's
that's
like,
what I was,
Yeah. And I have a self-care document that's probably about 3 pages long. And I remember it was so funny. I sent it to a client. She's like, well, I already do all these things. Like it could be like even just a face wash, a little bit of a facial. She goes, well, I already do that. Okay. Well, now you're going to change your perspective, and it's to you, from you, with love.
Yes.
She's like, oh, because she's a mother of 4. She's super busy. I get it. And, self-care can't be another checklist.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we have to look at the things that we're already doing that now we just need to change the wording and the perspective and be like, okay, to me, from me with love.
Yeah. The intention, right? The intention. The intention. The other thing is, I provide ceremony. I do healing ceremonies in person.
Yeah.
And being able to recognize that everything in our life is ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in our life is ceremony. Washing the dishes can be a ceremonial, intuitive, and intentional from love action.
True. Yeah.
Everything that we do, and it's all based on intention, everything. Shante Ishta, single eye of the heart. Everything is centered in love. So loving ourselves, blessing ourselves, just what you're saying, like to me, from me. We can bless ourselves and love all of it. I think duality and polarization is like really so crippling for people. It's like when we're moving back and forth between good, bad, right, wrong, it's so overwhelming. When we can recognize that, even the good moments, we're gonna sway between good, and whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. As long as we are in resistance to what is, we're going to create our own suffering.
Yes, so true.
When recognizing, we try to hold on to the good because we're afraid of the bad, but the bad is part of the experience here on earth.
Yes.
And when we can learn to flow with it all, we can ride the waves and we can move through difficult times with a place of love for ourselves and empowerment and compassion, recognizing we're all on the same journey, man. And there's some of us that are getting hit by the waves, and there's some of us that are learning how to ride the wave. And I want to take you, Rhonda, you're on the same mission, to take you to learn how to ride the wave of life so that you're not lambasted by a wave without, being so disconnected and unconscious that you didn't even see it coming.
Yes.
We can learn to just recognize this is all working for our highest good, even addiction.
Yes, so true.
Even addiction, even the most horrific things that are happening in our world right now. If we look at them from bad, we can look at them from, what am I going to learn from this? How can I take this to help myself and help others, and shift and change and pivot from this powerlessness mindset that I'm out of control. I can't control. I can control a lot. Yeah. I can have a huge impact by just changing me, working on me, recovering my truth. Loving myself, recognizing my shadows and the stuff that I want to pretend isn't there.
Yes.
And then I can hold space for everybody else and other things with boundaries.
So true. And, and with ceremony too, I just want to mention that you don't have to be religious.
No.
It doesn't mean you have to be religious or have some sort of like super deep spiritual practice. I mean, a ceremony can mean so many different things to people. We have what we call ecotherapy, and this one really lands well with a lot of people too, where they just go out on a nature walk and they, I'll just use a pine cone for an example. So they'll pick up a pine cone and that represents their worries. And whatever that might be, whether it's the loss of somebody or something that's really, they're struggling through in that moment. And then they'll go and put it under a tree. And then they'll say their goodbyes to it and walk away. So it's just this action of putting this meaning into it. And then these action steps of walking away. It just gives it a more of a purpose. And I mean, that's just one example, right? There's so many. But I have a very deep spiritual practice myself, and gratitude.
We're on the conscious, the divine intelligence is gratitude. So I work with a ceremony similar as you, like, picking up a flower or a leaf and recognizing all that we are nurtured with, all that we are given, all that we are provided, all of the blessings, all of the things that we get so distracted, we don't stop to really look around and see all the beautiful abundance in our life.
Yeah.
We get caught up and focus on what we don't have.
Yeah.
And you're going to get more of that when you focus on that. What you put your attention to and your energy to, you will receive more of it.
Yes.
So coming to gratitude, again, expands our world. Look at all the things that I'm grateful for. Picking up a flower and then giving it back to Mother Earth, thanking her, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So
to the
true.
to the God of your choosing. Thank you.
Yeah. And, you know, and for the viewers that might think some of this is a bit woo-woo, there's actually science. There's science behind this as well. You know what I mean? Because our bodies, our nervous system is designed only for one thing, and that is to stay alive. So if I ask somebody, okay, let's look at your whole week. Tell me what happened in your week. 9 times out of 10, someone's going to give me all the things that were kind of bad or uncomfortable, because our body remembers more emotionally charged events because they were uncomfortable. And that's our body trying to keep us alive so that we don't go and do that again, or it stays away from the things or the triggers that was related to that event. So when we focus on all the negatives, really, it's just our body trying to keep us alive.
Yeah.
So we relive it over and over and over again. But finding those little glimmers in life is like, you really have to work at it.
You do.
You do. You absolutely have to work at it, because we are breaking the thought interruption.
We're creating new pathways in the brain. And this is, what I work with my clients on is subconscious reprogramming.
Yes.
So we can't control the first thought, but we can control every thought after that. And we can actually become more and more aware of the subconscious thought, those negative thought patterns that actually are triggering us, fueling us in part of every decision that we make. But when we start to activate and get to that root command, there's commands within that subconscious mind that are playing in the background all the time that are impacting every part of your life. Yes. And when you recognize and become aware of them, doesn't mean they're going to go away. Sometimes we can actually remove them. We can replace them. Sometimes they're so embedded in that subconscious mind that it doesn't mean they're not going to be there, but you're going to see, feel, hear them in your mind. And in that moment, you can declare the truth. You can take power over that thought and say, no more. Nuh-uh.
Exactly. Yes.
I see you, and it ain't happening.
I've had some debates about this with clients that are, they're like, oh, that sounds so woo-woo, with the I am affirmations.
Yes.
I say, like, read them 3 times a day. Read them when you wake up in the morning, read them partly through the day, and then before you go to sleep, because it activates your reticular activation system, which the RAS, which is actually a real thing. It's located at the stem of our brain, and it acts as the guard, the filter. So what that does is, like, we have about 11 million bits of information streaming through our mind at one given time. Like, even right now, if I said, is your feet on carpet or tile? You weren't thinking about that just 3 seconds ago, but you are now. So when we put the I am affirmations or our goals in the forefront of our thinking, then the reticular activation system goes to work in order for that to happen. So for an example, if you were going to go and buy a black Honda car, you've been watching, like, looking at it on the internet, looking at pictures, talking about it. Now you go out onto the highway. What do you see? Black Honda cars, right?
Yes.
Because your subconscious now is opening up opportunities for that to happen. So when people are like, oh, that's so woo-woo, I'm like, well, let's talk about how that negative mind chatter is working for you.
Yes.
The limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And all of we call it the roommate. Right?
Yeah. Taking up space, right? Taking up space in your mind, and it's not serving you.
No.
Yeah, it's not serving you. And I think, to even take, the step further with the trauma healing that I work with, we can become aware of a command, and affirmations are powerful. They really, truly are. And when we're working with unhealed trauma, we're talking about sometimes our own experiences, sometimes, genetically, DNA, the epigenetics that we're carrying with us from lineages, right? From past generations. And we can become aware of a command, and we can repeat these affirmations, but guess what? The body is still triggered. The emotional charge is still triggered. So the trauma work that I do is we get really deep into the subconscious mind to remove that command and the energetic charge that is held in the body, and we neutralize it.
Yes.
So those two things together, affirmations and removing the energetic charge, is actually healing the trauma from the body somatically.
So true.
Then the declaration is like life-changing.
Yeah, it's
because
so
you're not
true.
just telling yourself something, you have activated and removed that epigenetic tag that has been repeating over and over and over. And that's why addiction is so tricky, because there's these deep-rooted traumas. And even though with the best intentions and willpower, I'm going to do this, and and we mean it. I say we, because I consider myself, I was addicted to saving and solving my kids. We all struggle with different severities of addiction.
Oh, for sure.
One degree or another.
Yeah.
So addiction can be anything, but it's like when we get in, that's why addiction though can be so hard, because there's these deep rooted traumas that we can have all the best intentions, but that emotional charge is going to win until we take our power back and we learn ways, we do some trauma healing, and we release these energetic charges along with the reprogramming of the mind and coming back to the truth of who we are. We are freaking powerful.
We're so powerful.
Beings.
Yeah.
And we're all on this journey. We're all doing this together. And that's where the stigma, you and I are the same.
Yeah.
And we're experiencing this life in different ways.
Yeah.
But
I love it. And epigenetics. Together. Oh man, you're speaking my language. I read a lot of Bruce Lipton and Joe Dispenza, and like what you were talking about, how that energetic imprint is stuck in the body, and that's where somatic therapy is really helpful. And like Joe Dispenza, really, he says you said it beautifully. And then one thing I read with Joe Dispenza is like, you have to replace it with something greater than. So even with the I am affirmations, okay, yes, it's some phrases that we say to ourselves, but evoke some feeling into it.
Yes.
Bounce up and down, hop. I tap and bounce. So I create movement and whatnot. And I know a lot of people think that, oh my God, that's crazy. But I know I want to be respectful of your time. However, before I let you go, I just want our viewers to know, like, can you tell them like where you were though? Like, so were you feeling some of those intense feelings to a point where you were having a difficult time navigating through life, like just engaging in ordinary activities and separating yourself from the rest of the world?
Yes, 100%. And so I've recently published a book called A Bigger Mission, and it's a collaborative book with 12 authors, and I talk about, one of the most impactful, life-changing moments in my chapter, and I was suffering so badly, and I was driving in my car, going to my parents, trying to just get away from my life, from all of it. And I had a moment where I was driving in my car on the highway, and I thought, if I just pull into the oncoming traffic, it'll all be over. And I get emotional just saying it out loud. And that's how badly I was hurting. And in that moment, I was touched by something so much greater than me. And it flooded through my body, this warmth, this hug, this love that I had never experienced before. And I got chills through my whole body.
I'm getting emotional just listening.
And I heard like loud and clear, your life matters. Your life matters. And this isn't for nothing. Keep going.
Wow, that's powerful.
And it was literally changed my life. I kept driving. I went to my parents. I never told anybody that happened to me. This is like, I'm just starting to share this story because it was so life-changing. And I literally woke up the next morning and I signed up for yoga teacher training.
Amazing.
And I never even thought of doing it before. I woke up with this, like, I'm signing up for yoga teacher training. Where'd it come from? I have no idea. My higher self. This is your
But
next
trust
step.
those thoughts.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the beginning of my healing journey. And it took a long time. I think 4.5 years now since then. And my life is completely different. I know
Completely
myself
different.
better than I've ever known myself.
Yeah.
I can set boundaries because I know my worth. I know that I am deserving of peace, of love, of joy, of happiness, of chasing my dreams. I deserve to surround myself with people who support me, not bring me down. And I can stand in my power and express my truth and push through difficult times. And I can help my loved ones do the same because I know how to love myself, even the parts of myself that I still have to challenge myself because I think they're not good enough.
Yeah.
And I encourage everybody to know that wherever you are on this journey, however badly you're hurting or suffering, you can find a way through. There is an open opportunity right here and right now. And it's the conscious choice to change, to do something more because you know you deserve more.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that part of you, because I really wanted the viewers to hear that you are in a very dark place, but there is hope. And it's not a quick fix. Like you said, you've been on this journey for 4 years, but now you're a completely different person and looking back. And so thank you so much, Jen, for coming on today. So to learn more about Jen, check out her co-created Finding Balance documentary, and I will include the link in the description here. It's a revolution in self-care and mental wellness, along with her book, A Bigger Mission. So I will share that link as well. Thank you so much, Jen.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.